Well, here we are again, guys. We are still in Cape Girardeau County, Missouri, and we are focusing on some areas in downtown Cape Girardeau along the river. There's a lot of murals and things right down there that we're going to capture. So stay tuned and continue to stay with us as we work through this series on Cape Girardeau County, Missouri. All right, we are in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, along the flood wall next to the Mississippi River, and we're going to do the murals down this wall. So here's the start of the big mural, and then this is called Nature's River. This is the Mississippi River Tales mural from the River Heritage Mural Association. Nature's River. The Mississippi River Valley is a vast area that drains nearly half the continental U.S. The rich soil and ample water of this wetland made it a haven for plants and animals. The hawthorn tree prospered in this environment. Its brilliant blossoms and bright red berries became the Missouri state flower. It is an ancient plant and source of legend and myth. The colorful Carolina parakeet was the only parrot native to eastern North America and existed in large numbers along rivers and in wetlands. Early settlers used the parakeets for food and adorned their hats and wreaths with their bright feathers. Once prevalent in the river valley, the last known specimen perished in captivity at Cincinnati Zoo in 1918, and the species was declared extinct in 1939. Images of these birds exist in prehistoric art. Well, that's awful. So that's the parakeet in the mural here. 1200 is the marker we're on. Between 900 and 1200 AD, many Native Americans lived in the Mississippi River Valley. Due to their close relationship with the river, anthropologists and archaeologists use the term Mississippian to describe this thriving native culture. This civilization reached its peak in the 500 years prior to the arrival of Europeans. The Mississippian culture constructed earthen mounds throughout the valley for housing and ceremonies, leading many to identify them as mound builders. They raised corn and used the river to trade throughout much of North America. Living in harmony with nature and their environment, the mound builders trained red-tailed hawks to hunt and used logs to make sun calendars called wood hinges to determine the seasons and planting times. In this panel, residents greet the morning sun as it rises over the Mississippi River. 1673. Marquette and Joliet. In 1673, Jesuit priest and missionary Father Jacques Marquette and French-Canadian explorer and fur trader Louis Joliet led the first French expedition of the Mississippi River. Hearing rumors of a great river to the west that would lead to the Pacific Ocean, they launched a search for this potential northwest passage. Joliet was to lead the exploration. Marquette would serve as chaplain, extending Christianity to any Native Americans they may meet. This panel shows Marquette leaving the Great Lakes region for a trip down the river, despite warning from members of the Ottawa tribe in Wisconsin that things would become more dangerous further south. Traveling in one canoe, the small crew navigated the Wisconsin River to enter the Mississippi. They soon concluded they were headed towards the Gulf of Mexico. Recalling the warning that if they traveled further south, they would encounter extreme heat, fierce people, and great beasts, they turned back for the safety of French settlements on the Great Lakes. And over here is a sidebar, Spanish exploration. Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto was the first European to explore the vast Mississippi River Valley in the early 1540s. His trek to America was spurred by an unsuccessful search for gold. In May 1541, he sighted the Mississippi River and crossed into what is now Arkansas, exploring further west and south. While returning to the Mississippi in 1542, he died of a fever and was buried in stream by his men. So there is the Spanish explorer for De Soto, and then again, that is Marquette and Joliet. This is 1735 Girardeau Post. Girardeau Post, I guess. Girardeau Post. Again, please don't come at me. I'm just a hick. I can't tell you some of these pronunciations. As part of the 1735, the Girardeau Post. As part of the French effort to establish a military occupation of the Mississippi River Valley, Ensign Jean-Baptiste Girardeau established a trading post on the flat plain at the bend of the river north of Cape Rock, known today as the Cape Girardeau Country Club golf course. The choice of this location is believed to be due to the terrific force of the current and dangerous whirlpool south of Cape Rock. The remote outpost became a popular gathering place for river travelers. By 1765, maps of the river identified this site as Cape Girardeau, after its namesake Jean-Baptiste Girardeau. This site was also the first location of Cape Girardeau. The city was later relocated a couple of miles south due to repeated flooding. So here's the Cape Rock Park. This beautiful park and memorial stone is approximately a 2.5 mile drive north of this location. It offers a scenic view of the Mississippi River. And this is the bend of the river. By 1765, maps of the Mississippi River identified this bend and its dangerous water as Cape Girardeau. So there is 1735. So 1793. Planning a city. In 1793, Spanish officials in St. Louis named Louis Lorimer the commandant of the district of Cape Girardeau. Shortly thereafter, the Spanish government sent Lorimer to establish a military post in Cape Girardeau, granting him the rights to settle and develop the land. The Spanish land grants totaled several thousand arpents. One arpent equaled 85% of an acre. In this panel, Lorimer and his secretary, Bartholomew Cousin, talk about land grants and distribution of land, laying out lot and street plans for a community on the wide, flat riverfront. Cousin was the engineer and surveyor who platted Cape Girardeau. The military post grew into a small riverfront village under Lorimer. In 1806, he donated 4 acres to establish a seat of justice. 2 years later, in 1808, the community was incorporated as the town of Cape Girardeau. In the background is Lorimer's home and trading post, the Red House. A recreation of this building is located 2 blocks south. There we go. And we are at 1803. Lewis and Clark. Between 1803 and 1806, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark led President Jefferson's Corps of Discovery to the Great American West. During their travels, Lewis and Clark passed through Cape Girardeau on November 23, 1803, delivering letters of introduction to the city's founder, Louis Lorimer. Lewis met Lorimer while he was presiding at a horse race. Lewis wrote about his visit to the city in his journals and described Lorimer in detail, including his dark hair that was long enough to touch the ground. Wow. Later that evening, Lewis dined with Lorimer and his Shawnee wife, Charlotte, noting the beauty of one of their daughters. Lorimer welcomed Lewis at the area's first business and trading post and Lorimer's home. A recreation of this building is known locally as the Red House. And here is the Red House Interpretive Center, which is a replica of the original trading post and home. And it's 3 blocks south of here and was built in 2003. So there we go, Lewis and Clark. And at 1804, the Louisiana Purchase. French military leader Napoleon Bonaparte was considering selling the Louisiana Territory to the newly established United States. Napoleon's brothers, Lucien and Joseph, visited Napoleon to convince him not to sell the entire territory. Reportedly, Napoleon was in the bath at the time of their visit. After splashing his brothers with soapy water, he stood up and declared, "I renounce Louisiana," causing his servant to faint in Lucien's arms, as depicted in this panel. The Louisiana Purchase territory was signed in 1803. Ultimately, more than 800 miles of French land was purchased for about $15 million, doubling the size of our young nation. In this panel, the French colors are being lowered in New Orleans, Louisiana, as the U.S. flag is raised. An onlooking French soldier sheds a tear. In 1804, Upper Louisiana was officially transferred to the U.S. The French had never determined the exact boundaries of the Louisiana Territory. In order to define the area purchased, President Jefferson sent Lewis and Clark to explore the land, which explains the importance of their journey. All right, here we are at 1821. Missouri statehood. Following the Louisiana Purchase, many people from the South rapidly moved into this area, bringing the institution of slavery with them. In 1818, the territory of Missouri petitioned Congress for statehood as a slave state, setting off a national crisis. There were currently 11 slave states and 11 free states. To keep the balance of power in the Senate, Congress reached the dramatic Missouri Compromise. The former Massachusetts territory of Maine was admitted as a free state, and Missouri joined as a slave state. On August 10, 1821, Missouri became the 24th state of the Union. In this panel, the well and lighthouse represent the state of Maine, while the riverboat and river represent Missouri. Marie Oliver is seen here sewing the first flag of the state of Missouri in Cape Girardeau. And then we have the legendary Mike Fink. One of the first great characters traveling the Mississippi River was the legendary keelboatman Mike Fink. Keelboats were wooden vessels 10 to 15 feet wide and up to 50 feet long that hauled passengers and freight. Larger than life, Fink was considered as great of a frontiersman and marksman as Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone. Fink was a renowned hunter, fighter, and riverman. Ironically, Fink died after shooting a tin cup off the head of a barroom challenger who fainted from the stress. The man's brother, believing Fink had shot his brother, promptly shot and killed Fink. So there's Mike Fink. And then 1821. Let's move on. 1838. In 1830, this is the Trail of Tears. In 1830, the U.S. Congress passed the Indian Removal Act, which led to the forced relocation of eastern Cherokee tribes to Indian Territory west of the Mississippi River. Between 1838 and 1839, the U.S. government forced thousands of Cherokees, and there were other groups in there as well, to move from their homes in Georgia, North Carolina, and Tennessee to present-day Oklahoma. In the autumn of 1838, 16 separate groups of Cherokee, about 16,000 in total, began the 1,000-mile overland journey to the west. The loss of life on the trail was high. Nearly 4,000, or 25%, died on the way. This mural portrays tribe members traveling through harsh winter. 15 of the groups crossed the Mississippi River north of Cape Girardeau at what is now the Trail of Tears State Park. Area residents were reported to have provided baskets of food to the Cherokee caught up in this tragic event, now called the Trail of Tears. And here's the marker that's at the Trail of Tears State Park, located just 11 miles north of this panel. Trail of Tears State Park offers scenic overlooks of the Mississippi River, as well as a visitor center that further tells the tale of the thousands who died on the forced march. And you guys already know what I think of this part of American history. It's deplorable. We are here at 1861. Civil War. The Civil War left its mark on Cape Girardeau, which is why this mural contains 3 scenes depicting the conflict. The mural to the left is the Civil War era view from Fort A, one of 4 forts constructed in Cape Girardeau by Union forces during the summer of 1861. Fort A was located on the bluff that can be seen just west of the first panel of the Mississippi River Tales mural. Encircling Cape Girardeau, these forts provided protection from attack by land or water. Fort C guarded the western and southern approaches to the city and blocked access by Confederate forces. Grant versus Prentiss. Cape Girardeau became a fortified and occupied community during the Civil War. Newly appointed Brigadier Generals Ulysses S. Grant and Benjamin Prentiss reached Cape Girardeau on the same day with conflicting orders of command. This image recounts a heated argument the 2 generals had over rank. A shouting match took place in which Grant emerged the winner. Prentiss returned to St. Louis while Grant went on to battle in Vicksburg, as well as Shiloh and Chattanooga, Tennessee, and later became president. Okay, so there's the fighting generals. And now we're on to the other part of the Civil War mural, 1863. Civil War. A barrage of cannon fire erupted on Sunday, April 26, 1863, when Confederate forces tried unsuccessfully to take the city by attacking from the west and south in the Battle of Cape Girardeau. During this conflict, several Confederate cannonballs pierced the roof of the residence of Alfred Lacey, a banker and mayor of Cape Girardeau. The mural to the right depicts a moment from the battle during which Ike, a family slave, reportedly extinguished the resulting flames, saving the house from destruction. From this point to the end of the Civil War, Cape Girardeau remained a safe and secure post, protected by a perimeter of strong fortifications. There's a marker at the plaque at the corner of Broadway and Cordelia Street, marks the location of this battle, which is 1.85 miles from here. And then there's a marker at for Fort B. A plaque marks the former site of Fort B on the grassy median that divides Normal Street on the campus of Southeast Missouri State University, 1.4 miles from here. And then there's a marker for Fort C. It's a plaque that also marks the former site of Fort C near the southwest corner of the intersection of Good Hope and South Ellis Streets, about 1 mile from this panel. So there is the rest of the Civil War panel. Here we are at 1870. St. Vincent's Young Ladies Academy. In 1839, St. Vincent's Young Ladies Academy was founded in Cape Girardeau by the Sisters of Loretto as a school for young women. It was one of the first of its kind west of the Mississippi. Prior to closing in 1923, thousands of young ladies were educated at this academy. St. Vincent's Seminary. St. Vincent's Male Academy was founded in 1838 and later evolved into St. Vincent's Seminary. In 1858, the seminary changed its mission to training young men for priesthood. Here, young men from across the nation, as well as Europe, learned the equivalent of a high school education in preparation for advancement to St. Mary's of the Barons Seminary in Perryville, Missouri, and Venetian priesthood. This image, the blue here, it depicts the towering courts in which young men played handball. To the left is St. Vincent's Seminary. This building is now part of Southeast Missouri State University's River Campus, located just 4 blocks south of this panel. And then here's the part that's Mark Twain. Cape Girardeau is situated on a hillside and makes a handsome appearance. There was another college higher up on an airy summit, a bright new edifice, picturesquely and peculiarly towered and pinnacled, a sort of gigantic castor, with the cruets all complete. Uncle Mumford said that Cape Girardeau was the Athens of Missouri and contains several colleges. This was an excerpt from Life on the Mississippi by Mark Twain. On his journey downriver, Twain was describing the 3rd District Normal School, later known as Southeast Missouri State University. So there is the part of the handball courts, and of course the women's young girls school. Okay, we are at 1875. River commerce. Before the arrival of the railroad, the Mississippi River was the commercial lifeline of Cape Girardeau. The docking of packet boats loaded with goods and passengers was an exciting event in the community. Commonly 60 to 80 feet long and more than 14 feet wide, packet boats were a more comfortable means of travel for passengers than a bone-jarring stagecoach ride. These boats fell out of favor as railroad travel improved. In this depiction, prominent local merchant Colonel George Thelinius observes a riverboat crew at work during the height of the riverboat commerce in the 1880s. The deckhands hauling barrels and sacks of grain are roustabouts, longshoremen of the steamboat era that handled cargo and worked around the docks. It's likely that the grain was destined for Thelinius's flour mill on Broadway. There were 3 other mills in Cape Girardeau circa 1880. Longview, listed in the National Register of Historic Places, this home was built and owned by Colonel George Thelinius. Constructed from 1871 to 73, it is believed to be the only house of its type and period surviving in the area. Longview is located on Whitner Street, about 1.4 miles from here. So, and there is Thelinius. And we are here at 1880. And this is the coming of the railroad. After earlier attempts to bring a railroad to Cape Girardeau failed, Louis Hawk, a local lawyer, historian, author, and now railroad builder, made an arrangement with creditors based on his ability to build the first railroad line from Delta, Missouri to Cape Girardeau by midnight on January 1st, 1881, just 6 months away. The distance was approximately 16.5 miles. If Houck could do so, the creditors would grant him clear title to the properties of earlier failed railroads. Very close to the deadline, the workers ran out of track, about 1,000 feet from Cape Girardeau. Houck was determined to accomplish the task. He ordered the engine to run to the end of the uncompleted track so workers could tear up the rails behind the train and use them to complete the track into the city. According to stories, the train came into Cape Girardeau 3 minutes before the deadline arrived. Cape Girardeau had a railroad. And the railroad today. The railroad lines in Cape Girardeau are frequented by trains to this day. The horn of the engine can be heard from miles away as it approaches downtown. And of course, I've been filming along this railroad the entire time. So there is, okay, we are at 1909. President Taft's visit. The first sitting president to visit Cape Girardeau was William Howard Taft. He arrived early in the morning on October 26, 1909, part of a 16-boat flotilla or small fleet carrying dignitaries. Taft traveled down the river with cabinet members, governors, judges, and river commissioners to publicize the need to establish a 9-foot channel the entire length of the river. More than half of the vessels traveling to New Orleans ran aground at some point. Maintaining a safe and secure channel was essential to river commerce. To greet Taft, a large welcome arch was constructed over the entrance to the city at Themis Street, located to the left of this panel. It was the most celebrated event in the city's history to that point and was always recalled as Taft Day. At the Academic Hall, a crowd of nearly 25,000 people gathered to hear President Taft speak from the steps of Academic Hall on the college campus. So there is the mural of Taft with the archway that was built. All right, we are at 1916. The Great Fire, the biggest fire in the history of Cape Girardeau, was on March 15, 1916. The city was wakened by the shriek of a steamboat whistle early that morning. The blaze began south of Broadway, engulfing the Terminal Hotel, Buckner Ragsdale Store, and Frisco Railroad Depot. Additional rail cars and equipment arrived via the railroad to assist in the evacuation of goods from other downtown structures. The fire then spread north across Broadway to engulf the Riverview Hotel, one of the oldest and largest buildings at that location and the most well-known hotel between St. Louis, Missouri and Memphis, Tennessee. Cape Girardeau lost its 2 major hotels in this fire. Later, the Marquette Hotel would be constructed on Broadway, safely away from the threat of fire. And there's the Marquette building, formerly a hotel. This building still stands and is located 3 blocks west on Broadway. All right, we are at 1918. The Big Freeze. In the early 20th century, the Mississippi River was wider and slower than it is today. It was more inclined to freeze over during periods of cold weather. The winter of 1918 to 1919 was especially frigid, and the river was covered with ice for several weeks. A fun but risky activity was to walk across the frozen surface of the river. Some drove a team of horses and wagon across the ice, or occasionally an automobile, as you can see if you look closely at this panel. Others chose to walk across the slippery surface. So this is winter in Cape Girardeau. And there, can you see to the right of the smokestack there? There's an automobile out on the water. There we go. Okay, we are at 1924. The 3 Cape Girardeaus. For most of the 19th century and the first third of the 20th century, steamboats were vital to the economic livelihood of Cape Girardeau. Shown here are the 3 steamboats that bore the name Cape Girardeau. The first to carry this name was in service until she sank on July 10, 1910. In early 1911, an older boat was refurbished and became the second Cape Girardeau. It sunk in 1916, close to the site of the sinking of the first steamboat. In 1924, the third Cape Girardeau, and the grandest of them all, was christened here. She was a steel-hulled vessel and pride of the community until she was sold in 1935 in the midst of the Depression. She mysteriously sank that same year while docked at the St. Louis riverfront. All 3 Cape Girardeaus were commanded by Captain William Buck Leahy. Riverboat captains were among the most well-known individuals in their town. Captain Leahy was the most famous of all the town's river pilots. He and his collie, Toodles, were great favorites in Cape Girardeau. So there's the... All right, panel 1925. Riverboat Jazz. 2 of the most exciting new trends of the 1920s were jazz and ballroom dancing. Riverboats were an ideal location for both. Cape Girardeau's music man, Raymond F. Pegmeyer, led one of the most popular bands that played on the riverboats. Myers Band was also the first to play on the radio in Cape Girardeau. This panel depicts Myers Jazz Band performing during the golden age of jazz. Jess Stacy, one of America's greatest jazz pianists, joins Peg Meyer on saxophone, Berg Snyder on drums, and Pete Lowry on banjo. Most of the early jazz bands wore costumes to add to the fun. Myers' venture in selling music and musical instruments led to the establishment of Shivelbein's Music Store, a staple of Cape Girardeau since 1949. So here's the Heritage of Music mural. An additional outdoor mural celebrating music is located on the west-facing wall of Shivelbein's Music Store, located 6 blocks west of here at the corner of Broadway and Frederick Street. So there is another look. All right, this is 1927. The Big Flood. The Great Flood of 1927 remains the flood by which all Mississippi River floods are measured. At that time, it was the most destructive flood in American history and the nation's largest natural disaster. It caused more than $1 billion in damage at a time when the entire annual budget of the nation was $3 billion. More than 1,000 people died and 700,000 were driven from their homes. The devastating effect on communities along the lower portion of the Mississippi River resulted in the creation of the Jadwin Plan. This comprehensive plan sought to control the river with a coordinated system of levees supported by floodways, spillway channels, and improved mapping starting here and continuing to the Gulf of Mexico. So this is then and what downtown looked like. And you can see the river just going right over the railroad and into the buildings. And then now, which is where I'm standing, on this side of the flood wall and the railroad. And you can see that the flood wall has worked. It saves historic downtown from flooding. So there you go. So here is the 1927 mural again. And we're going to continue on down. We are at panel 1958. This is river industry. The Mississippi River provides an abundant supply of sand to Cape Girardeau. Used to make concrete, this great resource enhanced the community's ability to construct large concrete projects, such as the A.C. Braze Arena, Interstate 55, Bill Emerson Memorial Bridge, miles of streets and sidewalks, as well as the Mississippi River flood wall. The towboat, Miss Evelyn, featured in this panel, was owned by the C.W. Woody Rushing family and named for Woody's wife, Evelyn Rushing. Captain Woody, one of the great modern boat captains, stands watch on the bridge in this image. This is the Common Pleas Courthouse. The 59 steps leading to this courthouse are an example of how the abundance of sand contributed to the use of concrete in buildings. Located just 2 blocks northwest of this panel, on Spanish Street, the scenic view from the top of the staircase is worth the steps it takes to get there. This is the A.C. Braze Arena. Built in 1939, the A.C. Braze Arena was the largest architectural concrete building in the Midwest at the time. It was also the largest Work Projects Administration, the WPA, effort of its type in Missouri, and the largest ever attempted in southeast Missouri. So there is 1958, and workers getting the sand to make concrete. This is 1964. I'm almost born now. The Great Wall. After centuries of floods, construction on the Mississippi River flood wall began in 1956 to protect the city from the waters that periodically ravaged the town. The massive flood control project was completed 8 years later in 1964 at a cost of more than $4 million. The system of earthen levees and concrete walls parallels the river for 7,210 feet, approximately 1.3 miles, and rises as high as 16 feet. It includes 2 pumping stations, 5 gates, and 6 drainage structures. The towboat pictured here is the Elizabeth Ann, owned locally by the Erbacher family. So here's a picture. I guess they're constructing the wall. There's the Elizabeth Ann. And you can see along the openings to the flood wall, they have high water marks and the various years of those floods. The flood wall proved its worth by protecting the downtown from the huge floods of 1973 and 1993, as recorded on this section of the floodgate located near this panel. So there's the mural again with the Elizabeth Ann going by as they're constructing this wall that we're looking at. All right, we are at 1980. And this is the riverfront. The initial effort to develop tourism into an economic force began in 1978. There were very limited funds available to promote the city. From that need, the idea of a river festival to raise money arose. For 21 years, from 1978 to 1999, the annual celebration called Riverfest was held near the riverfront. Music, games, food, and activities such as turtle races, craft exhibits, air and water shows, and fireworks were enjoyed by thousands of people from all over the region. The success of Riverfest helped inspire the building of the Show Me Center, creation of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and much more. This is the Riverfest mural. It's an additional outdoor mural commemorating Riverfest, and it's located 2 blocks northwest of here and can be best viewed from North Spanish Street, just off Broadway near the courthouse steps. And there is Riverfest mural. That's awesome. All right, this is 2003, and this is Bill Emerson Memorial Bridge. Bill Emerson Memorial Bridge. After 15 years of planning and 7 years of construction, the Bill Emerson Memorial Bridge opened to traffic on December 13th, 2003. The bridge was named for Bill Emerson, an 8-term congressman who had championed legislation that brought about the construction of this cable-stayed bridge. The floor of a cable-stayed bridge is held in place by cables suspended from a strong tower. At the time of its construction, it was one of only 34 cable-stayed bridges in the world. This new structure replaced the first bridge, which served the community for 75 years. The portal of the old bridge has been preserved and is a popular spot for residents and visitors. The site includes mounted binoculars for a close-up view of the Emerson Memorial Bridge, river, and more. And let me tell you, the new bridge is, the old bridge served its purpose, don't get me wrong, but it was a little scary. Not, just saying. Scary. So we were very thrilled when the new bridge was opened, and it is an amazing bridge. But here's the overlook that they're talking about, where the old bridge, entrance to it. So now it's the old Mississippi River Bridge, Scenic Overlook and Park, and it is located 4 blocks south of here at the corner of Morgan Oak and South Spanish Street. And then here is here's the old bridge. And then here is the Emerson Memorial Bridge. More than 170 miles of cable holds up the flooring, which consists of 250 million pounds of concrete with 13 million pounds of reinforced steel in the concrete. The total weight of this bridge is estimated to be 266 million pounds. So the mural does a really good job. It shows you the old bridge there. And then there's Emerson. So this is the Mississippi River Tales artist panel. Let's see here if I can get this up. The Mississippi River Tales mural is the longest. Let me start over. This is the artist panel. The Mississippi River Tales mural is the largest and most dramatic of Cape Girardeau's murals. The 1,100-foot-long mural contains 24 panels, measuring 15 feet high and covering nearly 18,000 square feet of the downtown flood wall. For 8 months, from April to November 2004, Chicago artist Thomas Melvin and his lead portrait artist Cameron Pfiffner directed the painting after Melvin had completed a great deal of research on the community. Additional members of the crew are listed under the paintbrush. Portrayed here are cliff swallows. These birds often build nests made of mud under bridges, just as they had under the old Mississippi River Bridge. Following the demolition of this bridge, cliff swallows returned, making new homes under the Emerson Memorial Bridge, and there they are. And they are noisy birds, I will tell you. But there you go. So there's the artist panel. It has all the different, under the paintbrush there, all the different artist names. Thomas Melvin, Cameron Pfiffner, Gary Boremans, Craig Thomas, Megan Thrower, Amanda Thornberry, May Melvin, and Ian Caldwell. Yeah. Well, that brings us to another episode on Cape Girardeau County, Missouri, historical markers. We still have more going. There's more to see here, so stay tuned with us as we move on to another episode of historical markers in Cape Girardeau County, Missouri.